Alright, hello everybody. So this is going to be a quick lesson, and this is just on how to how to export your projects. So in my arrangement view here, you can see that I have my 16 bar loop, and you can do any of the mixing that you feel is necessary. For instance, you may want to, change the volume of one of your tracks or all of your tracks. You can do any kind of mixing that you need to. Although this lesson isn't about mixing, this is more about just getting your 16 bar loop and understanding how samples work and how they can lend to your creative idea making, your creative process. So what you'll do to export the project is first of all do a save live set, and also do a collect all and save. And remember that when you do a collect all and save, what this is doing is it's collecting any of the samples that you've imported that may be in your, show you real quick here. So if we go to my music, so like I said, I have all my samples in my sample library that I then pull into Ableton. So when I want to move my project around and have all those samples come with it, then I need to do a collect all and save. And what that does is it'll copy any of the samples that I've used into this samples folder, and they'll go into this imported folder here. So these are duplicates of what I have copied or what I was using originally in my samples library. So this is really important to do whenever you're working with samples so that you can move your project around and all the samples come with it. So what I'll need from you guys is your samples lesson project, and make sure you do a collect all and save so that I get all of your samples, and then you'll send me this entire folder. I'll share a folder with you guys that you can upload them to. So that will be due on Monday. And then I want an export of your song. So let's come back over to Ableton, and I'll do a collect all and save. Click OK. And then what I want to do now is export this song. So we'll go to File. First of all, in your session view, in your arrangement view, you need to have your selection. So you'll use this bracket tool here to define your selection. So make sure it starts at the beginning of your song and ends at the end of your song. Alright, so now we'll make sure that we have our selection. We'll go to the File tab. We will go to Export Audio Video. So our bottom option here. And then we get this dialog box that comes up and asks what we want to export. Rendered track. We're going to just do the master track. This is going to contain everything in our project. It's going to come out as a stereo file. So this will all be one file. Otherwise, you can do all individual tracks. So you could, if you wanted to, export all of your tracks in your session individually. You could do just the selected tracks. So right now I have the drums selected, so it would just do the drum track. Or you can define which track, and you can even export just your return tracks, which we haven't talked about yet. So we're just going to stick with the master track. This is going to contain everything. And then we want to do the file type as a WAV file. This is going to match our session. Our sample rate is going to stay at 48,000 kilohertz. Our bit depth is also going to remain at 24. And then our dither options. So we have a few, and I believe by default the dither option is triangular, so we can stick with that for now. We will talk about what dithering is, but we're going to use the triangular default setting. And then we have this option to create analysis file. We're going to leave that ticked off. A lot of times it's on by default. We'll leave that off. We don't need an extra file to come along with it. And then the normalize option, we're going to also leave that off, so that what normalizing does is often it will basically lessen the dynamic range of the song. So if the song has a lot of dynamics and has mellow parts and then parts that get really loud or excited, it tries to normalize and equalize that all to sound kind of like the same volume. So we want to always leave normalizing off. It can really mess with a mix. And then we have the convert to mono option, and we're going to leave that off as well. The only time you would really want to convert to mono, because what happens is Ableton is always going to export a stereo file, which has two signals, a left signal and a right signal, and those can carry different information. When we would want to do a convert to mono option is if we only had a mono track. So say we just had one voiceover or something like that, where it's just one microphone, one vocal track, then we would convert that to mono to make sure that Ableton is exporting a mono track as a mono track rather than a stereo. And then that's about it. You can upload to SoundCloud, so you can link Ableton to your SoundCloud, I believe. And yeah, so as far as exporting a song, that's all we need to set up here. We're going to export our master channel, WAV file, 48,000 kilohertz, 24 bits, and then we're going to stick with the triangular dither option, and then we're going to click export. And then we're going to export this to our same inside of the same project. So this is going back to my digital music production spring 2020 folder. This is the samples lesson. So inside of the lesson, inside of the folder, the project folder, we're going to create a new folder, and this is going to be our exports. We're going to create a new folder for exports. And this is, we're making sure that this export is coming along with the session. So if we move this session around, now our exports are coming along with this session. So we'll do samples lesson export 1. And you might do several exports of the same song. A lot of times this happens when you're mixing, so you can go and listen to it in your car, and you can listen to it on your iPhone, and you can listen to it in different environments to see how it's sounding on, kind of like your everyday speakers. So you might end up doing several exports. So it's always nice to label these. In fact, I'll do 1.1, and then I would do 1.2 and 1.3 and so on. So I'll click Save, and then voila, our export is finished. So if I tab back over to my Finder, and I go into that Ableton lesson here, samples lesson, you'll see the exports folder that I just created, and inside of that you'll see the exported WAV file. And that's how you do a collect all and save to make sure all your samples are staying with your project. And then that's how you also do an export to make sure you're exporting it properly. So, short lesson, but an important one. And I think that's going to be it for today.